Hello and welcome, friends of fire, Bane French of DeEvolution. I want to do another video today, this one on the basic and universal steps of consistent and reliable fire making that I've encompassed into the acronym F.L.A.M.E. Universal in that these steps, when practiced, can be used in any setting, season, or situation, whether it's a low stress, elective fire, or it's a more urgent, dire matter. And why an acronym? Well, Dave Canterbury is a legendary outdoor educator. And he came up with the 5 C's of survival: cutting, combustion, cordage, container, and cover. And that construct has been very useful for me and probably many others. And I wanted to provide something similar in regards to fire, however pithy, that could be remembered and practiced. Now, there are many that I consider true authorities, and most of them agree that the single greatest outdoor skill that you could possess is the ability to reliably make fire, regardless of the setting, and doing so with numerous methods. And I agree with that. The great bushman Morris Kochanski said that if you are fire's master, it is the genie that does your bidding. It can provide warmth and safety, light, companionship, the ability to purify water and cook food, among many others. So the ultimate purpose of F.L.A.M.E. is to help you do those things with a high degree of confidence. So let's begin. F stands for freeze. Now, this isn't the inevitable outcome should you be unsuccessful, but rather it refers to stopping. You've identified a need for a fire. Stop, slow down, think, and ever remain calm. Freeze. L stands for location. This is the setting for the fire that you're going to choose. Safe spacing between the fire and flammable objects like trees. Perhaps using advantage of a natural windbreak. Being mindful of what's overhead or where you might want to sleep for that night. Using natural depressions or forming your own. Now, both DeEvolution cutting tools, the Yupik knife and the triple threat Pulaski, have digging functions, which is something I think is underappreciated in importance of tools. Lastly, regardless of your individual setting, the fire itself needs to be physically in contact with something that's bone dry, and that might be the ground. Commonly something elevated, like the inner surface of adherent bark, turned over, and your fire lay is on that. Regardless of how soaking wet the woods are, very commonly that will be dry. The next is acquire, A. And this is the procurement of a lot of material. The finest, earliest material being tinder. Now, the function of tinder is to take ignition temperatures and transfer that to combustion. Tinder can be a variety of things. I'm enamored with fatwood, and I wrote a book on it. And these fine shavings of this resin-rich wood provide excellent tinder, and it's what I'm going to use today. But there are many other natural tinders, and that is a big joy of fire, is experimenting with these natural tinders available to you. But there are many artificial tinders like crumpled paper, a host that are commercially available that work terrific. Kindling is the next size material. It's a spectrum of size from very small, maybe 2 millimeters, to a little larger, a couple centimeters. The purpose of kindling is to take that fledgling delicate flame from your tinder and make it a little bigger. The next material is fuel. Also a spectrum of size, just bigger stuff. It is designed to provide a longer burn, thus freeing you up. Now the M for flame is make. This is where it gets really fun, because this is the application of sufficient ignition temperatures to tinder to hopefully result in combustion, which is just burning. Now there's a host of ignition devices and methods, and that's another big part of the joy of fire for me, is coming to understand these varied methods and practicing their use. The ignition method that I'm going to use today is a ferrocerium rod with a really sharp carbide scraper. Now the E of flame is extend, and this is simply turning a relatively tenuous, meager structure into a viable force, allowing you then to do other things like collect more firewood. Let's go through the steps. We've identified the need for a fire. We freeze. We've stopped, slowed down, and started thinking. We've identified a suitable location for our fire. In this situation, the tinder is in direct contact with a very dry inner surface of bark. We've acquired ample amounts of material. Now, in general, you want to collect much more than you think you'll need. This is fat wood tinder, some kindling, and larger fuel. Now, in reality, this amount of fuel would be insufficient, but it's going to suffice for today's purposes. Now we're going to make the fire. We're going to take an ignition source, in this situation the ferroarcturous ferrocerium rod, and attempt to transfer that to the tinder. Now you might have heard of the term fire redundancy, and this is the concept of having more than one ignition method available to you at any given time, and it's a very useful practice. We have combustion, and now we move on to extend, which is simply to make this beautiful little fledgling into a powerful tool. Once that fat wood takes off, you're pretty good. There's no magic to applying this stuff. You just want it to be random and spaced. There needs to be a lot of surface area and ways for oxygen to get into that fire. Well, thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I hope the concept and the method of flame is useful for you. Until next time.